Hello, welcome everyone. Good to see everyone again. It's always a pleasure to be here with you to discuss the wisdom of God, how we apply that wisdom in our lives to have the kind of life that we would like to have. As we know, wherever you are right now in your life, you know whether it was easy or difficult, or you may be in some challenges right now, and you're trying to figure out how to get out of this. Okay. But the problem is this a lot of people don't understand is that this life was not designed to be a picnic. You did not come here to have fun, to relax, put your feet up, going on vacation, just enjoying life. That was not the purpose of the design of this life. So I would like to show you a few examples for you to see and understand this is not the purpose of this life. You are here to work. Okay. There's a work involved and there's a reward, there's punishment because that's the purpose of this particular design, which called life. Now, how do we know we're here to work? Well, let's look at the Bible. Let's look at a couple people in the Bible. The first person I like to talk about is if you look at Noah. Noah. Noah was working on the ark for 102 years, I think, somewhere around there. For over 100 years, he's building the ark. Now, think about this. Over 100 years working on the ark, preparing the ark, he's been working on. Now, the purpose of that too, that which took so long, was that as people walk by, people should be curious. You've been working on this for 50, 60 years and no one is asking question, what are you doing? And that was one of the problems the people at the time, they did not ask Noah what he was doing. Now, had they did, of course, the outcome might have been a little bit different for those people. But they did not. They didn't inquire. Why would this man spend so much time building this giant boat? But of course, they didn't know what it was for. But again, these are the questions that they should have asked in order to, or they could have been saved had they asked this question. So there are things that's obvious, but we're not aware of it. It's right there in front of us. We're not aware of it. So again, we are here to work. The next person is Abraham. Abraham was tested. He was tested. Not only that, he had to leave his home. God told him to leave his family, leave his nation behind to go to another country. And there he was tested 10 times and he passed all those 10 tests. Abraham had to work. Also, the special thing about Abraham, he knew there was a creator. He knew he spent his whole life trying to figure out who this God is, but he knew there was a God. So he worked trying to discover God. And again, this is if you speak to people who are religious people who read their Bibles, they understand this concept very well. It is our duty, it's part of our purpose here to find who God is and learn about him and serve God. So again, we're working. We are working. We are here to work. The next person is Moses. Look at Moses. I think pretty much everybody knows about Moses. What happened to Moses? Moses was working for his entire life, working to bring the Jewish people to the promised land. And how did it start? As a baby, he was put on a lake. He was supposed to be killed with all the other firstborn males. But again, he was taken in by the Pharaoh's daughter, raised by her, and so on. And then eventually he was exiled. He had to run away for his life. And he came back. And he came to the Pharaoh 10 times, say, let my people go. He had to work. He had to keep coming back and forth, back and forth. Again, it took work. And we took the people out of Egypt. Of course, again, work. Everything, if you notice up to this point, all these great men, all these men of God, all were working. There's no free lunch. Nothing is free. You have to work in this world. Even if you look at the homeless people. So you may look at the homeless people and say, well, these people need to get a job. The truth is they have a job. If they are alive, they have a job. Because how do you think they get the food? They have to talk, they have to travel, they have to walk around to the places where they can find the food to survive. So they are working. They may not be working like the work that you and I do, actually punching in the clock getting paid every 2 weeks, whatever the case may be, but they are working. It's just a different way of receiving that type of reward. Okay, so but they are working. As long as they are alive, they are working. No one is really not working because why? You need food to survive. And how do you get the food? Well, begging, getting money, somehow, or hustling, whatever means necessary, you are working to get that food to sustain your life. King David, another man of God. Look at his life. And those of you who are familiar with the scriptures, you understand King David's life. King David had to work. He was a sheep herder. You watch over the flock, okay, to make sure they were protected. That was one of his job. Now, the other thing too, when he became king, well, before that, King Solomon was king before him. And then King Solomon got jealous of him, became jealous because he found out he was going to lose his throne because he didn't obey God. He became obsessed trying to kill King David, chasing him around the country. So King David had to work to survive. He had to run different places, hide, find people who will help him, to feed him, give him food, give him shelter. So he worked just to sustain his life, to stay alive. When he became king, he had to work again. And what is that? He went into battles. Okay? He went into battles. So again, work. We are going to work. We are created to work here. Next one, Solomon, of course. He had to work. He was the first king. Okay? He was the first leader, physical leader of the Jewish people. King Solomon. King David came second. King Solomon also had to work as well. He went to war, and the way he lost his kinghood was because when he went to war, God said, kill everyone and all the animals as well. There should be nothing left for anyone to remember of these people, Nothing left to remember these people. But because he had mercy on the king, and then also he took some of the flocks, the animals, is why he lost his kingdom. Why? Because he disobeyed God. And the problem is, honestly, not that I think, people assume they're more merciful or they know more than God. People really believe that. They think God is wrong. How can that be? I want to ask you a question. You can't even solve your own problem in your life. You can't understand a lot of things you cannot understand, but yet you believe that you know more than God. How does that work? How is that even possible? And this is a great error pretty much everybody makes, thinking they know more than God. And when you think that way, it will never be good for you, and you will always be an angry person, upset person, a disappointed person, and your life will not move where you want it to move. It's not going to happen because why? You've become God. You're God now. So God leaves you alone to struggle with the world because you know more than him, or you are equal to him. You see? So if you have that mindset, it's probably why you are struggling, because God says, well, I'm going to leave you alone. You know more than me. You're telling people, you're giving your opinion, and you're going according to your belief, what you think should be happening. So I'm going to abandon you. I'm going to leave you to your own device, and you see how your life going to turn out. But again, you know how ridiculous is that? It's imagine that your 5-year-old thinks he knows more than you. That's exactly what you're doing. You're that 5-year-old, and you're thinking you know more than your parents. Ladies and gentlemen, wrong. It will never happen. You will never know more than God. It's not possible because, number one, of course, you're not God. Number two, you are in a physical body. Your understanding is limited. You cannot even understand the simple, well, if you knew more than God, then you should know as much as all the attorneys, all the doctors, all these professions. You should know them inside out. Why? Because you know. Because God knows all this. All this information, all the trade, all people ways, everything there is to know, God knows. Do you know all these things? No. Then you can never compare yourself to God or give an opinion whether or not God should have done something or not. That is not your place. If you notice, as I just mentioned with these great men, they did not question God. Now you can ask questions to God and says, why is this happening? Because genuinely you want to know so you can correct it. You're not questioning God because you believe you are equal to God in understanding. Okay? Not going to happen. But again, there's nothing wrong with asking questions because God wants you to ask questions because it's like a child who wants to know and he's asking his parents a certain question. It's not that he's asking to say that he is equal to you. He wants to know so that way he will have a better understanding what to do. And this is the point, or this is the perspective you should take when you asking God. Not that I know what you know, because no one can ever know what God knows. Even the angels doesn't know what God knows. Nobody's capable of knowing what God knows. Okay? So get that out of your mind because that mindset alone will bring trouble and it will destroy your life and you are not going to be a happy person because why things always going to be difficult for you because you're going against the wave, you're going against God. And I'm sure you heard the expression, if you can't beat them, join them. And this is one war you will never ever win. It doesn't matter what it looks like right now, you're never going to win this. Make it easy on yourself. Start learning about God. Start learning His ways. Implement His ways into your life. Let Him become the center of your life. And I'm telling you this from my own personal experience and other people that I know. If you don't believe me, you can also speak to people who are believers, like Christians. If you have Christian friends, I'm sure they have told you how much their life have changed since they start to implement the Word of God into their lives. Okay? There's a huge difference in terms of life for someone who is following God's ways compared to someone who has nothing to do with God. Day and night, ladies and gentlemen. The mindset, the joy, the peace, the comfort, completely opposite to one another. If you're not on that side, you're not going to have these peace, joy, happiness, and security. It doesn't exist outside of God. He's the only one that can provide you with those things that you were created to have. Okay? But you're trying to obtain them without God. You're trying to exclude God out of His own plan, His own design, and you want to have it your way. This is not Burger King or drive-through when you're ordering, I don't want mayonnaise or ketchup or this and this on your burger. This is not Burger King. It's not going to be your way. There's only one way, and that is God's way. The sooner you understand that and start to implement it, the easier your life going to be. Now, again, remember, anytime you decide to come to God, it does not happen overnight. If you look at all these great leaders I talked about, King David took years to become a king. Every one of them, it took years, 102 years to build the ark. You notice it takes time. They were in a desert for 40 years, the Jewish people in the desert for 40 years before they were able to move into their own land. Imagine that. It wasn't overnight things. Why? Because you have to develop into that position. When you develop and learn and get into that position, guess what? You're going to appreciate it. And the best way I can explain this is this. When you go to work and you earn a check every week or every 2 weeks, you appreciate that check. Why? Because you know what it took for you to earn that money. But if someone gave it to you, you don't look at it the same way. Money that's given, you don't value it the same as the money you had to work and sweat over to earn. It's a different type of system of appreciation, okay? So this is what happened, is why it takes time for you to get what you're asking for God to get you where you need to go, because you have to develop into that place. Another example, your son asks you for a car, right? He's 15 years old. But let's say he used to drive your car and he has 30 tickets within a year. Are you going to give him another car? Are you going to give him a car? No. First, he has to prove himself being responsible for about another year or two before you decide to purchase him a vehicle. Because why? He has to grow into that maturity of that responsibility of owning a vehicle before you would go out and purchase a vehicle for him. So again, you see, we ourselves, just because we are adults, we think physically, we think we are adults, we are responsible. Not true. Not true. If you are not following God's words, there's no way you can be responsible because there are instructions how he wants you to operate in this world. That's being responsible. Without God, you cannot be responsible. It's impossible. It is really impossible. Again, there is no alternative. There is not another way out of this. It's either you do and you are rewarded, or you don't, you suffer. It's that simple. Okay? So I thank you for joining me, learning with me. Again, share this video. Talk to people in your family. Watch it together with your children. And this is information, and the beauty of this information, of this God wisdom, even though you go back and watch this video months later, a year later, you're going to learn new things from it. You say, wow, how come I didn't realize this? Because God has to give you that wisdom, that knowledge, that new piece of information. He has to gift it to you. Why does he gift it? Because he see you making an effort to learn. You want to know. So he gives you more. And the more you watch, the more you're going to learn, and he's going to give you more knowledge, and your knowledge is going to start expanding, and you're going to realize, wow, look how much I've been missing out. One thing about God's word, I can tell you, it is sweet. When you really get into it, it is really sweet. When you start to see these things are happening because you're learning, it becomes very sweet because you want to know more and more and more. And the more you want to know, the sweeter it becomes. The more you know, the more you start to enjoy your life. You start to feel comfortable because you know what to do, what not to do. So again, thank you for joining me. It's always a pleasure to have you. Share this video, subscribe, and I thank you, and I thank God for you. God bless you, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.